Welcome to the Modern Day Naturopath podcast with Dr. Sue. Real talk for those craving deep healing whilst living in a modern day society. You'll be equipped with knowledge to make profound mind-body shifts that utilize ancient wisdom and will facilitate your healing once and for all. Inspired by Dr. Sue's chronic illness journey and all the real and raw pearls she has learned along the way. Come as you are. It's never too late to start.
Welcome back to the Modern Day Naturopath podcast. This is Dr. Sue. Today we're going to be talking about a hot topic of acne and holistic skincare, but from the inside out. And I have a very lovely friend and guest today, Maria Marlowe. Maria is a certified nutritionist, best known as the Acne Nutritionist for her pioneering work in using diet to transform skin health. She's also the creator of Biome, a cutting-edge probiotic designed to clear and nourish skin from the inside out, redefining skincare by tapping into the powerful gut-skin connection. For over a decade, Maria has empowered thousands worldwide to take control of their health through the power of nutrition. Her signature 90-day clear skin plan is a step-by-step roadmap to uncovering and addressing the root cause of acne, helping people achieve clear, radiant skin naturally, even when conventional treatments have fallen short. She's the author of The Real Food Grocery Guide and Be Healthy Every Day, with over 30,000 copies sold, has been featured in Vogue, Good Morning America, and numerous other top media outlets for her expertise in nutrition and skin health. Welcome, Maria. Thank you so much for being here. So excited.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to chat.
Course. And so let's tell everyone how we met. I think we met in Manhattan because I think one of your doctors might have recommended you see me for something. Is that how was it?
To be honest, I don't remember exactly, but all I remember is going to you for for a session and being blown away by your knowledge. And I'd never been to a naturopathic doctor before. And then you basically were like, made me so interested in naturopathic medicine. And I actually refer a lot of people to you and to like naturopathic doctors because I just really feel you guys are just so knowledgeable and I love the holistic approach.
Thank you. And I always say I love being people's first because I don't want them to have some experience that kind of jades them because not every naturopath practices the same, right? You know, just because someone's sick or a naturopathic doctor, we all have a different background. Even our personal histories come into play, our personalities. So I love giving someone a good first experience because I want them to then be excited about seeing naturopaths and not be like, oh God, I'm never going back to that type of doctor.
I was like, I'm never going back to a regular doctor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the expression that you want to make. Like, I'm never going back to conventional verse. I'm never going back because, you know, in naturopathic medicine, because, you know, it's not considered the norm to first go to someone who's a naturopath. So you are already having that skepticism of people to begin with. So you really want to make that good lasting impression.
Which you absolutely did.
Thank you.
And, even my husband goes to now. Like I really think what you're doing is amazing.
Thank you so much. And I actually want to hear more before we go into all of the nuances of what can cause acne and how we can help acne holistically. I want to know more about what you did early on in your life. Was this a career change for you? Was this something you started out doing and you've been continuing doing? All of that. And also if any of that, for example, any of those personal experiences then made you decide, okay, this is now what I want to do for a living.
Yeah. So what got me here was the fact that I had really bad acne and it persisted for years despite trying all the different things from the drugstore topicals to the prescription medications, and nothing was working for me, or it would work for a short time. And then as soon as I was off the medication, it wasn't working. Or with some of the medications, it has to get worse before it gets better. And I felt like mine always got worse. It never got better. So I was just so frustrated with my skin because with skin, when you have acne and it's on your face, it's not just a physical issue, it's also becomes a mental one because your self-confidence is just shot. And I remember canceling things, skipping school, skipping events, skipping whatever, meeting up with friends because I was just so embarrassed of my skin. And it wasn't until I got to college where at the time I was not studying nutrition. I was actually studying fashion merchandising.
Wow.
And yeah, so I was studying fashion and I thought that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a buyer at Bergdorf Goodman. That was my
Oh
career
my God,
goal
that sounds like a
at the
dream
time.
now.
Yeah. And then I was sitting with a friend at lunch eating, pizza, chocolate chip cookies, and Coca-Cola, which who does, the perfect lunch, right? And I was sitting with a friend and complaining about my skin, and she's like, it might actually be caused by what you're eating. And that thought had never crossed my mind, never crossed my mind. And I at first thought she was crazy because I'd been to all of these dermatologists who are supposed to be the experts in skin, and not one of them had ever asked me what I was eating. So I was a bit skeptical, but I was also desperate. So I said, all right, I've tried everything else. It didn't work for me. What do you have for me? Give me some guidance, give me some direction, which she did. And long story short, I completely overhauled my diet. I worked on my gut health because I also had a little bit of digestive issues at the time. I also was sick all of the time because, as you can imagine, if your gut's not healthy and you're not eating well, your immune system is shot, right? You're going to get every cold, flu, virus, this, that, the other thing. So I was always sick, had all these issues, but it was the acne, of course, that really prompted me to change my diet. So anyway, changed my diet. My skin cleared up in 3 months. 3
Wow.
months after, like, almost 5 years, okay, of trying all the topical stuff and even internal medications and everything. And so, to be honest, when my skin cleared up, I kind of still had PTSD, and if people were like, "Oh, your skin looks great," I'd be like I thought they'd be making fun of me, like, that's how, like, long I'd been struggling with it. And I was like, "Oh, you know what? It can't be the food. There's no way that it's food. I think my prayers have been answered. That's the only explanation for this." So I went back to eating the pizza and the cookies and of course my skin broke out. So that second time, that is when I realized, okay, it is actually the food. And you know what? Why isn't anyone teaching us this? Why, I had to happen to meet this girl who kind of pointed me in this direction, but in all of the magazines and all of the dermatology offices, everywhere I was going for skin advice, nobody was talking about food. So I said, okay, fine. If no one's talking about it, I want to be the person to talk about it. And that's why I ended up eventually changing career paths to study nutrition and focusing on acne.
Oh my goodness. It's so funny that you said, you go from like your dream career, being a fashion buyer at Bergdorf to then just meeting someone who says food is causing your acne. And then you're like mind blown by that. Like now what we know now, it's like, well, duh. Right. But like you hear that and now you're like, oh my God, food actually does change my acne. And then when people actually tell you that you're looking good, you don't even believe them because you've been in this, self-conscious loop of, feeling. I mean, most of my acne patients tell me it's the most, what would be a good word, like a good emotion? Frustration, anger, self-consciousness. Would you say that they especially having like 100 pictures in their phone, right? If you're an acne patient, you have like 100 pictures of your acne because you're waiting to show this doctor or another doctor. But it's just crazy how the concept of food as medicine is so foreign to us. And it was to me too at that age, because I think we're around-ish the same age. Well, I don't remember how old you are. I'm
I'm
40.
38.
Say,
Yeah,
like, there's
38. Yeah.
no, I don't really say hello. I never like to say that number. But yeah, that's my first time. I'm like, okay, guys, I'm 40. Um, but when you're in
It's
that
a
stage,
great number. 40 is a great
yeah,
number.
that's what everyone says. You know what? I have to tell you this really quick because I said this to a patient yesterday and it made me laugh. We were talking about how, you know, she was on birth control for acne because that's the only solution that the GYNs give people. And, I said, yeah, but, I also, when I was 17, I didn't know any better. It wasn't for acne, it was for cramps, but I went on it too. But we don't know better than we do these things. And so I gave her an example of, I remember going to the Lexington Avenue, Bloomingdale's, and going to, what is that, 40 something carrots? What's that frozen
Mhm.
yogurt? That was my lunch. It probably had 400 pounds of sugar. And I would get this big, huge frozen yogurt, and that was my lunch, and I thought that was healthy. So the point is, when you know better, you do better. Like, we didn't know back then that food was driving, right? And then you'd be coming home with
Right.
this bloated belly and the scales going up, and I'm like, "But I'm having a frozen yogurt." And, at Bloomingdale's, why am I not losing weight, or why am I bloated
Yeah.
all the time? So I think, you know, we don't know those things back then. So then you decided to go to this the health coaching program where we both did. I can't remember,
Yep.
did you do the last in-person class in person before I went to IIN as a health coach before I went to medical school. You did too.
Yeah.
Did you I had the last in-person class in Lincoln Center. Did you have that, or did you have the virtual one?
I had the first virtual class, so what must have been
Oh, you
right
missed
after.
the in person.
Yeah.
That was
So,
pretty.
yeah, they still had the in-person events, which was, like, I think once or twice a year, but, yeah, unfortunately, I didn't have the live class, which I think would have been really cool.
Yeah, we learned the same, obviously, you learn the same info, but it was Lincoln Center, and it was amazing just to be around,
Yeah.
just feel the energy of everyone, and a lot of those people that were there also had their own health journeys that they were trying to figure out what was wrong with them, and then,
Yeah.
again, when they figured it out, they were then inspired. So after you did that program, what did you started doing one-on-one type coaching with clients?
So, yeah, so first I started health coaching, and I was doing it more like general health coaching, and I found like a lot of people wanted to just lose weight. That's kind of
Yeah.
like was everyone's goal at the time. And so I was focusing on that, but then people would come to me who wanted to lose weight but also had acne, and then also their skin was clearing up as well. And because acne was so, close to me and so important to me, that's why I eventually decided to delve a little bit deeper into acne nutrition and study like integrative dermatology and take extra course credits on integrative dermatology, and do like a nutrition program as well to kind of go a little bit deeper and really specialize and focus on acne.
That's amazing. So we both basically did the same thing. We did the health coaching, and then all I kept getting was weight loss clients, and they wanted a
Yeah.
detox weight loss. So I guess around that time, I guess we were in our what, 20s then, right?
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
We were in our 20s. While it was interesting to just help people with that, I felt like I needed more, and that's exactly what right? You felt like you needed more, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I became a naturopath, and you were like, "Hey, let me start going into
Yeah.
a bit more." And so I would love to hear one of the most, or maybe some of the most common misconceptions that people have about acne. You've obviously been immersed in this world for a long time. What do you hear that are either myths or things that people really believe to be true that aren't true, that would actually help them get on a journey to clear skin if they realize that these things might be holding them back, for example?
I think the biggest misconception about acne is that it's caused by bacteria. And I know
Mm.
when I had acne, that's what all the magazines were talking about. And even to this day, when you go to the dermatologist, oftentimes the first thing they'll prescribe for acne is antibiotics. But the science has shown us differently. So we used to think that acne was a bacterial infection for decades, but around the 1980s, research started to show that it was more likely inflammation that was causing acne, not actually the bacteria. So we know that, for example, the acne causing bacteria, the bad one that we were all trying to scrub off our face with St. Ives, is is actually commensal or good bacteria. So this particular bacteria is found on clear, healthy skin in equal amounts, more or less, as people with acne. And we've also found that people with acne don't always even have this bacteria on their face because they are taking antibiotics. So it's possible that it's getting wiped off, but they're still breaking out. And so there are all these kind of issues and inconsistencies with this acne is caused by bacteria theory. So starting in the 80s, the research started pointing towards inflammation. Over the next few decades, more and more studies came out kind of pointing to that. So in the early 2010s, acne was actually reclassified as a chronic inflammatory skin disorder. And so this was really a paradigm shift in the understanding of acne from a bacterial infection. Now it's a chronic inflammatory disorder. And so that shift should have changed the way that acne is treated, away from antibiotics and towards anti-inflammatories. But when we're talking anti-inflammatories, I'm always, pushing towards the diet and lifestyle, right? Because that's really a powerful influence over our inflammation. But it didn't. So by and large, antibiotics are still really the most prescribed medication for acne. And interestingly, the reason that they work while you're on them typically is because the class of antibiotics that's used for acne also has anti-inflammatory properties. But the problem is that once you go off the antibiotics, now you have some level of gut dysbiosis in there, because the antibiotics don't just kill the one type of bacteria, they're also killing the good bacteria. And so that leaves us with gut dysbiosis. So what a lot of people find is that after antibiotics, long-term antibiotics, the acne actually comes back with a vengeance. So that's the kind of unfortunate paradox there. But so I would say, yeah, so the idea that acne is caused by bacteria is the biggest misconception, and really understanding that it's really caused by inflammation is a game changer, because then you can start going after the root cause. The confusing thing sometimes is that everyone has a different diet, everyone has a different lifestyle. So we may have different factors that are causing inflammation for us as an individual. So there's no one size fits all approach. And that's why it is helpful to work with a practitioner who can kind of help guide you to understand what's causing inflammation for you in particular, and then remedy that through diet and lifestyle changes. And that will be a game changer.
That is so important. I'm so happy you mentioned this bacteria aspect, because when they start feeling like they take the antibiotic and their skin clears up, they think it was a cure. And then again, just like you said, antibiotic is right, anti against biotic life, right? The opposite of a probiotic. You're killing everything. And most people are not even doing probiotics while they're doing antibiotics. And even if they do, it doesn't mean that they, yes, it will decrease the likelihood of some common side effects of antibiotics, like maybe a UTI or a yeast infection, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to cause dysbiosis. And I see it all the time on a comprehensive stool analysis that I run for patients. If they take antibiotics, their commensal, which are those good guys that you need for inflammation modulation, they're completely depleted. And so then again, they feel like they have to get back on an antibiotic, and then it becomes this vicious cycle. And you're right. If you're changing the name of, okay, an inflammatory response, you would think you would be changing the treatment, but they're not. And I'm really happy you brought that up. And then speaking of inflammation, there's so many reasons that, right, a person can have inflammation. And like a lot of people will say, well, what can I take for inflammation? And they think I'm trying to be vague, or I'm trying to get away from the question or not answer them. But I'm like, well, it depends on why you have inflammation, right? Do you have a chronic infection? For example, are there actual gut bugs in there that's causing it? Is your diet inflammatory? Is it that you have chronic stress because you're in toxic situation in your job, your career, your life, your family dynamic? Is it you have chronic viral reactivations, right? Do you have mold? Do you have Lyme? Like, there could be a million reasons. So do you often get that question too? Like, well, what can I take for inflammation? And while we know there are some really helpful vitamins that reduce inflammation, that's not root cause. And while that might help, right? Do you feel like you get that question of, they want that answer? Okay, great. So it's not bacteria. So now it's inflammation. And what do I take? Right? Do you see that
Yeah.
happen a lot?
Yeah, for sure. Because we all want the easiest
Fix,
way
especially with
out,
acne.
It's
Yeah.
just human nature, right? We're like, just give us the easiest thing to do. But the reality is that, yes, we can add an anti-inflammatory. I would say foods would be even more beneficial. Of course, there's supplements, but I think food is always, we
Number
want to
one.
start with the food, because we are eating on average 3 to 5 pounds of food a day. So if you're
Wow.
taking, yeah, if you add up the whole day, that's the average person's eating 3 to 5 pounds. So if you take like a teeny tiny little pill, it can certainly be helpful. It's going to be concentrated, right? So it'll certainly be helpful. But if you imagine, okay, the power of that little pill, but also the power of the 3 to 5 pounds that you're eating, right? So you can do a lot with your diets. And I think supplements are also helpful, but as a supplement, we need to have the foundation of a healthy diet, because if you're taking that supplement and then you're eating all inflammatory foods, the supplement is going to just constantly be trying to put out the fire that you're keep reigniting, you know?
That's
So
expensive. It's like,
yes.
right? That if they keep doing that, just like eat healthier, right? And
Yeah.
that's like that could be their root cause is that alone.
Yeah. So I think food plays a huge role, and gut health plays a huge role. I think that in acne patients in particular, there's almost always some level of gut dysbiosis, because really inflammation starts in the guts, and it typically starts with the leaky guts and the imbalanced bacteria in the gut. So we know that, for example, acne patients tend to lack the good lactobacillus and bifidobacteria strains. Those are the strains that help to keep inflammation levels in check in the body. And they tend to have more of those pro-inflammatory bacteria in the gut. We also know that they are more likely to have increased intestinal permeability or leaky gut. And so, again, that's going to be a source of inflammation, and you're going to be more reactive to a lot of foods. And I'm sure you see this with your patients. People who have acne tend to be more reactive to more foods.
Yeah.
So if we can work on healing the gut, introducing good bacteria to the gut, working on improving the gut lining integrity, that is going to reduce a huge, huge source of inflammation in the body. It's also going to allow you to absorb your nutrients better, because sometimes we can be spending all this money on organic, healthy foods, and then our gut is so messed up that we're not actually absorbing the nutrients properly. So really, I think the foundation is starting with a healthy gut. I think that's really the first place that anyone needs to start, whether it's regular acne or hormonal acne or any stress acne, any kind of acne. You really need to start in the gut, because that's basically the foundation. And that's really why I had created Biome, which is the probiotic specifically for acne prone skin, because there is this research that acne patients are missing some of these good lactobacillus and bifidobacteria. And so I formulated it with 6 strains that are clinically validated to support that gut skin connection and help to improve skin clarity and skin hydration from the inside out. So I do really think that starting with the gut is so important. Using supplements, even doing testing is really important. Working on the gut lining, all of these things are going to be the foundation of a healthy, clear skin lifestyle.
Absolutely. And I'm so happy you spent time talking about the gut part, because what I see with my patients is they go on social media or read these articles. And listen, I love social media and the aspects of we didn't have that growing up with learning. We're learning a lot more now, but we're being led to like, oh, it's just our hormones. And while of course I do see a lot of patients with hormonal disruptions that have acne, lately, even more so than ever, I'm doing one of those specialty Dutch tests, which a Dutch test is an at-home urine test. It does sex hormones, cortisol. It has also this organic acid panel now that checks biotin, B12, inflammation markers, etc. And their hormones are not bad at all. And when I tell them this is a systemic issue, this is a gut issue likely, and we should do gut testing now, their mind is blown. And sometimes it takes a few convincing appointments of, hey, what you thought was the main cause. And yes, of course, there could be hormone fluctuations. But when some people are like, no, it's my testosterone. That's what it is, because I saw this ad or I saw this video. And I just recently had a patient with that exact concern where, you know, the test didn't show testosterone, blood work didn't show testosterone, or the Dutch test didn't show testosterone. So then we talked about, hey, there's this root cause of acne that's in the gut that I don't feel like enough people are actually talking about. They're talking about androgens, right? Testosterone, DHEA, DHT, right? They're talking about PCOS, but and of course the gut issues will create imbalance in your hormones. So you should be working on both. And as you mentioned, just working on
Yeah.
your diet alone is important, just in general, to help support your hormones. And then we supplement a healthy diet. And I love you said you're eating all those pounds of food. They never quantified it like that. So it's like when people say, "Oh, you're being dramatic, that food's that important," but well, listen, you're eating that much food a day. How could it not, right, have an impact? And even in your own personal story. So do you also see that once you add in your probiotics, so the Glow Biome, to them already eating healthy, that kind of just gives it an extra push? Like, do you feel like you've seen where that addition will kind of really get them to that next level?
Yes, absolutely. So, what it's going to help with is a few things. One of the key things is regularity. And when we're talking about hormones in particular, it's really important that we are regular and fully eliminating every single day, because if we're not, then this can be contributing to hormonal imbalance. So the way that the body removes excess hormones, the liver breaks them down, sends them to the gut to be excreted through the stool. And if they're hanging around in your gut for too long, then they actually get reabsorbed back into the bloodstream, contributing to imbalances. So for anyone with hormonal acne, pooping every single day and every day fully and completely is a game changer. And one thing I want to just highlight here is you could be pooping every day, but not like necessarily fully evacuating everything, and that could still be problematic. So you need to make sure you're really getting everything out every single day, that you're super regular and fully evacuating. So probiotics really help with that. And Glow Biome really helps with that. So that's number one. Number two is that it's helping to reseed the gut with those good bacteria that are going to help with digestion, that are going to help with your gut lining, and just kind of help digestion overall. So for sure, it's a game changer. And especially, I have a lot of if you read the reviews, there's a lot of people with hormonal acne who have seen like a huge improvement even within a month, within like one cycle, just by adding in the probiotic.
See, so that's proof, right? You go to the
Yeah.
gut first, and now they're seeing huge improvements. And I think I actually have a discount code with you for your product, right? I think it's Naturally Sue.
Yes.
We'll put that in the
Yeah.
comments. I believe it's
Yeah.
Naturally Sue. So you can go to Maria's website, which is it just mariamarlowe.com?
Yeah. So mariamarlowe.com is my website, but the site specifically for the probiotic is kumaglow.co. So KUMAGLOW.co.
Perfect. And then you can use that discount code, Naturally Sue. And let's just say, you don't have the means to do a comprehensive Dutch test yet, because these are out of pocket. I mean, the good news is you can use FSA, HSA. So some people have those and they take out a dedicated amount. Or let's say you can't do a GI map. So far, what we're sharing is, first look at your diet, look down at your plate, and then even something as little as just adding in a probiotic. If you don't have one of those fancy tests, but if you do have the means, or let's just say you've been struggling with acne, going to doctors for 10 years, that's adding up. And your time is also an amount of self-confidence issues, and the feeling like you can't go out, or always having to have concealer in your bag and looking at pictures and being so self-critical of yourself. You have to say, is it worth me just actually figuring out what it is? Let me make an investment, find
Yeah.
out what's going on, so that I don't have to have years, right? Time is money too. So let's just say you do have the means, or you do want to budget or invest. The stool panels are really helpful because, as Maria mentioned, they have a leaky gut marker. So there's zonulin, also secretory IgA that's in the stool panel. And so we could see if secretory IgA is a bit low and then zonulin is high, it could indicate a leaky gut. Sometimes people have leaky gut without those, but those are more indicative, or like easier proteins to track to know if and secretory IgA is an immunoglobulin, but it's a little bit more helpful to find out on a lab test, right? If someone has leaky gut. And also there's a marker called, and it's a long name, but it's called beta glucuronidase, that tells us if you're recycling your estrogens. And that's usually happens with dysbiosis, which is an imbalance of good to bad bacteria. And if you're not pooping them out, as Maria just said, every single day, then you are recirculating estrogen. And testosterone is not the only hormone that's giving you acne. It could be your estrogen too. So the digestion part of it, even right, would you say just starting with pooping every single day would be one of the most important things to start
Yes.
clearing your skin?
Absolutely. And there's so many things you can do. So of course probiotics help, drinking enough water helps, drinking or eating enough fiber helps, walking, movements every day. So exercise is great, but if you don't have the time or the inclination or whatever it is, at least go for a walk, and especially walking after meals helps to just move things along a little bit better. So those are all easy things that you can do to support regularity.
Yeah, and people don't realize that walking is underrated, right? You're moving your lymph. Those are the drains in
Mhm.
your body, as we know, with accumulation of toxins, right? It's another
Yeah.
reason that we can have acne. Just like you said, we break down hormones in the liver. If the liver is sluggish with a bunch of different toxins, right? Just moving your body, getting the lymph moving, even thinking of things like how can I support my liver and toxins without these fancy cleanses, just having some bitter greens, for example, or some beets and some lemon, right? Like food is medicine. You can support your liver. So if we would say the top root causes, so we've talked so far about inflammation being one root cause of acne, and then where is it coming from? We talked about some of those causes, hormones.
Yep.
We mentioned testosterone, estrogen, the gut, obviously
Mhm.
leaky gut, low commensal. Also, have you seen patients with, I see this a lot, the H. pylori? Do you know the connection? I don't know if you've researched that yet, but I've learned a lot more about it in the last 2 years. But pylori, that stomach bacteria, that's one of the main causes of stomach ulcers, is linked to a lot of dermatological conditions. So rosacea, could be acne. So you can just look on a GI map or one of the Genova stool panels to see which bacteria are overgrown, right? So there's a whole section that says opportunistic bacteria. And another one I just learned about lately, because I've had just like an influx of acne patients lately, interestingly enough. Happy we're doing this now. But they told me that Staph aureus specifically, when it's overgrown, can contribute to skin issues. And they told me at GI Map, I love talking to them. They have the best doctors because they're like gut experts, is all they do all day is research the gut. And they
Yeah.
said that certain probiotic strains, I don't know if you have it in yours because it's a different one. I think it's called Bacillus I have to look at the exact name, but there's a certain bacillus that's
Mhm.
supposed to get Staph aureus, and I can also
Bacillus
put it.
subtilis.
That's it,
It's Bacillus
Bacillus.
subtilis. Yeah. So that is good for Staph aureus. That is correct. It's
Yeah,
not in Glow Biome. We don't have it in
okay,
Glow
you
Biome.
know we got it. No
Yeah,
big
it's
deal.
it's good to layer on. So and that's also a question sometimes people ask, like, can you take too many probiotics or can you mix probiotics?
Yeah.
So, the Glow Biome is Lactobacillus and Bifidobacteria strains. These are strains that are naturally resident of the human gut. So even like, infant probiotics and things like that, they're going to contain Lactobacillus and Bifido because these are naturally in the human gut. The bacillus strains, these are soil-based organisms. So these
Right.
are organisms that are found in the soil. And traditionally, we would, pull the carrot out of the ground and maybe, wipe it off a little bit and then eat it. So that's how we're getting it. But now also we're sterilizing everything. You go into the grocery store, everything's in a plastic bag that's been washed in a chlorine bath, which is
Oh,
crazy. All your vegetables, and I'm like, what? Like, can't you just like put the vegetable there? Like, why does everything have to be in a plastic bag
gross.
and pre-washed, And so, yeah, so bacillus is a soil-based organism. So you can kind of mix and match. If you have Staph aureus, it is incredibly helpful.
Okay, so thank you. I was like bacillus, and then it was like tillis. I couldn't get the first. Okay, thank you. That's exactly
Yeah.
it. Because it's like a tongue twister. So yes, you can add it to Maria's Glow Biome, and the ones that I have seen that have that strain on full script that I use for patients is Microbiome Labs.
Bottom
They're like
line.
yeah,
Yeah.
Microbiome Labs is a huge gut centered supplement company, and they have a product called HU58, which
Hmm.
HU58, and that has higher amounts of that Bacillus subtilis in it. So
Hmm.
that's something. But again, one thing I want to mention with, right, this is individuality of every patient. You may take a probiotic and feel great. And all of a sudden, the next day, you're like, wow, my bowels are better. But some people, it actually can detox them because you're reseeding and then the body is able to start getting rid of stuff and you're getting rid of some of those bad organisms. So don't be shy to open up your probiotics, maybe take a little out, start with a little bit, then do a little bit the next day, right? Especially the strains that are trying to put those bad guys back into place because
Yeah.
if they're secreting bugs. So some people, and I have a lot of sensitive patients, they actually, even though it seems like just a therapeutic thing, like, oh, a probiotic, it's nutritive and nourishing, but it can also cause detox for people. And then I see some of them just getting worsening acne. So, and that's just temporary.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but and I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you feel what, let me rephrase that. I have to tell my patients this is going to potentially be an up and down of you might have a breakout. The goal is to have less breakouts, less frequency, less duration, less intensity, right? So if it's like a breakout that normally lasts you 3 weeks, maybe it's a break that lasts you 1 week, or maybe it
Yeah.
didn't, maybe it's instead of 6 times a month, it's 2 times a month. So I tell them that, while I never detox anyone right away, like, these people that just start taking all these crazy cleanses and they have a huge breakout, I usually do like the basics, right? Like the diet, and I want to hear about your clear skin plan. But I want to mention you don't want to go and do some detoxing right away. You want to do these nourishing things first, the walking, the drinking, the water, right? The lifestyle stuff. And then you might have a detox reaction from a probiotic that might happen and you might flare. But don't get discouraged if you flare because that's part of the process. So would you agree with that? And I'd also love to hear if that's included in your what you call your clear skin plan.
Yeah, so this is a great point that you bring up, and I'm really glad that you brought it up because, like you mentioned, for most people, if you just add in a probiotic, most people are going to feel better. But there is definitely a group of people who may actually initially kind of feel worse or have like flare in symptoms, digestive symptoms, or maybe skin symptoms. Because, like you mentioned, what's happening is there's all this good bacteria coming into your gut, and it's basically a turf war because there's guys already living in your gut, right? Those bugs are already in your gut, and they're like, "Hey, this is my home." And then these new kids come in on the block,
Yeah.
and so there's a little bit of a turf war, and then that can cause diarrhea, for example. It can cause a little bit more gas and bloating initially. Usually, it lasts a few days to a couple of weeks. Beyond that, if you're taking a probiotic and it's going on, you're having these symptoms for more than 2 weeks, and I would say it's probably, it may not be the right probiotic for you to definitely do some testing and see what's going on. But yeah, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. It usually will just resolve like as the new good bacteria take hold in your gut. And so, yeah, I do think it is important to kind of layer things on and to start with the basics. And then, as you're kind of opening up your drainage pathways and you're, giving your body what it needs to handle, I guess more potent things. I think that's the way to do it versus, just let me start and just take all these supplements and do all these things all at once. I think it's really important to kind of go methodically step by step.
Yeah, thank you for kind of putting the seal on that because sometimes it's just you just don't know, right? You just don't know. And I think people get really discouraged and then they like give up because
Yeah.
they want, do you ever see that I always share that, that like picture on Instagram you always see where like it says what healing you think it looks like, and it's like this opera line and it looks like a spaghetti where it's like up and down and up and down. That's usually
Yeah.
what happens. And when you mentioned too, like my own personal story, in 3 months, my acne, yeah, because it takes at least 3 months to start repairing the gut, to start balancing the hormones. So I'm sure in those 3 months, you had some up and down too. It's
For
very
sure.
rare that I see that someone just has acne and then we tell them what to do and all of a sudden they never have acne again after month one. I mean, it yes,
Yeah.
while people can get significantly better, I had someone recently say that her acne was almost 30-40% better in the first month. While that can happen for some, sometimes it takes me at
Agree.
least 6 months. And what if
Yes.
it's been there forever and those imbalances have been there forever? It could take sometimes a year at least.
Exactly. So, yes, this is again another good point. I think 3 months is like a good kind of I don't want to say average, but like let's say average. It's for most people, I would say 3 months is a good chunk of time to get your gut in a better place and to get your skin better. Now, like you mentioned, if you're eating a certain way for your entire life or you're taking medications, like, when you layer in these medications like antibiotics, Accutane, birth control, all of these things, which are creating other imbalances, then it's going to probably take a little longer. It could take 6 months. It could take a year because there is such a higher level of dysbiosis and just imbalances in the body that you need to correct. So, not to get discouraged. Um, if you have like mild acne and you start making changes to your diet and lifestyle and all that stuff, maybe it takes a month. If you
Yeah.
just have a few pimples, it might take a month. Most
Yeah.
people, I would say it'll take 3 months, but some people it's going to take more than that.
Yeah, and thank you for mentioning. I'm so happy you said that about what, like, how long have you had this? The chronicity of it. If it's a chronic condition, if you've had it since you're 13 and you went on birth control to have your acne go away, and then if you did it for 5 years, now you're off of birth control, you have the acne. The birth control didn't heal anything. It actually created more imbalances, what they call post-birth control syndrome. So this is not to shame anyone who goes on birth control, but it's to empower you because I didn't know when I was 17 there were any other, right? I didn't know for my cramps that I was literally passing out from. I didn't know that I had other issues that were causing those cramps. So I went on birth control. And then what, again, I had is that post birth control syndrome where you either, it's issues with your thyroid, because I don't know if people know this, but birth control after, we call it post birth control syndrome. Birth control in general can inflame your thyroid. It can cause Hashimoto's, autoimmune thyroid disorders. It causes toxicity in the liver. It causes dysbiosis in the gut. Birth control causes nutrient deficiencies. I think there's like B vitamins. I know there's like vitamin E, CoQ10,
Mhm.
all of these vitamin deficiencies. So think about if you've been on birth control for so long, it's been a band-aid. So now we have to fix the actual root cause that you got it when you're 13, plus fix the imbalance of what happened to you on birth control. And that's why, I think it was Jolene Brighton, she wrote that book, Beyond the Pill. I don't know if you've seen,
Yeah.
she's a naturopath that wrote a book called Beyond the Pill, talking about giving informed consent for birth control. Because if you're going to take birth control, you should know that these things can happen to you. And another quick point, because this is super important, they now call birth control the gateway drug because most people who go on birth control, they end up on antidepressants right after. And
Oh,
I have
wow.
seen this to be true in a lot of patients. I had one patient go on birth control, and then a few months later, she was on Prozac. And she came to
Mhm.
me, she's constipated and she had all sorts of issues, exhausted. And I said, "Well, when did you start birth control and when did you start Prozac?" And it's always the antidepressants because it significantly alters your mood, especially the
Yeah.
like Depo ones and all of those. So
Mhm.
detoxing from the birth control is important. While you may get symptomatic relief, it's not a cure, right? Like it's a band-aid. And have you seen Accutane? Like, have you seen patients on Accutane, and have you seen any, like, I've seen some horror stories. Have you seen people on it and be okay, or what are the things that you've seen with patients on Accutane?
Yeah. So, I mean, first thing that I'll say about Accutane is it's not a cure for acne, although feel like sometimes people think it is. A lot of people are going on it now 2 or 3 times,
Oh
right?
my
Because
goodness.
again, it will clear for a period of time, and then say 6 months later or whatever it is, a year later, it comes back. And so they'll go on it again. And each time you're going on it, you're again creating more imbalances. And so I've had people who have, went on Accutane 2 and 3 times and their skin was still breaking out, be able to clear their skin through their diet and lifestyle. It will take a little bit longer, but it's 100% possible because Accutane, what it's doing is it is a band-aid. And it's shrinking the sebaceous glands, right, which are the oil producing glands in your face. But acne is not caused by having large sebaceous glands. That's not the problem. And even if, okay, oil production, that does play a role in acne, right? Because our pores if we're overproducing oil, the pores can get clogged. That's contributing to acne. But we need to ask, why are the pores getting clogged? Why are we producing too much oil? And again, that can always go back to diet. So we know, for example, if you have a high glycemic load diet, your skin is going to be oily. So if you then get your blood sugar back, balanced, you're going to find that you no longer have oily skin. So talking about myths and misconceptions about acne, I
Another
always
one.
say there's no such thing as a skin type. Okay. There's no such thing as oily skin type, dry skin type, normal skin type. We all have normal skin. We're all born with normal skin, which can become more or less oily, more or less dry, depending on our environment, our diet, and our lifestyle. And so if you're having some imbalance on your skin, then we need to figure out what it is and bring that back into balance, and you'll find that your skin becomes normal again. So,
Oh, so when you say there's no such thing as skin type, yeah, because they're like, "What's your skin? Is it this prone? Is it that prone?" You're like, "No, it's only prone to that because of your diet and lifestyle, right?"
yeah.
That's a huge point.
Yeah, so I actually did a whole YouTube video on this. So my channel's Glow by Marlowe, and it's I don't remember the exact title, but it's something about oily skin. You guys can find it. But I kind
Oh,
of like talk through all of the things and kind of show you before and afters. I have clients before and afters in 8 weeks where you can see the skin is initially so oily, so shiny in the photo, and then in 8 weeks it's completely normal. And it's just changing the diet and the lifestyle. And it is just mind blowing. It's really, really mind blowing. So I would say, adding more fiber into the diet and keeping your blood sugar stable is really game changer for that. Even stress can actually make your skin more oily because the cortisol can actually prompt your sebaceous glands to produce more oil. So again, it sounds crazy. It sounds absolutely berserk, right? That something like mental stress can affect our skin, our sebum, our acne, but it does. So yeah. So we all have normal skin, and I promise you can get back to having, quote unquote, normal skin if you kind of focus on the diet and lifestyle aspect.
yeah, this is so encouraging because even just a patient, she emailed me a couple months ago. She's like, "Yeah, I've been stressed and my skin is flaring again, right?" And now she realizes the more stressed she is, the more her skin is flaring, right? And then a lot of people will say, "Well, you know, I want to go on spironolactone." That's another, right? So we talked about birth control, we did Accutane. What do you think of the whole spironolactone phase?
So again, so that's a anti-androgen. That's why they're it's prescribed for acne. It's a off-label
Yep.
use. Again, all these drugs come from with side effects, right? There's a nutrient deficiencies, gut issues, right? And so
Mhm.
again, with androgens, if someone does actually have high androgens, because like you mentioned earlier, a lot of times people who, will be like, oh, I have hormonal acne because it presents either as that cystic acne or maybe it's even kind of in cycle or in sync with the period, the menstrual cycle. They will usually have quote unquote like normal hormones. Like their hormones will be fine. They're not really out of balance. But sometimes, yes, people will have higher androgens or those male hormones that are contributing to acne. So if that's the case, what I say is that whenever you have hormonal acne or hormonal imbalance, your hormones are not the problem. Whatever is causing your hormones to become imbalanced, that's the problem.
That's the
Because
problem.
hormones are messengers, right? So they're just reacting and responding, like cortisol, right? It's a stress hormone. If you're chilling on the beach, with a margarita and reading a book, you're not going to have cortisol coursing through your veins. But if you're, at work and everything's hectic and your boss is yelling at you or, whatever it is, then your cortisol is going to go up. Right. So the hormones are constantly responding to whatever inputs we're giving them. So if there is an actual documented hormonal imbalance, we need to figure out why are the hormones becoming imbalanced. And again, a lot of times it can go back to food. Blood sugar balance is really important for hormonal balance. Eating enough protein and eating enough fiber and eating enough healthy fat, eating a well-balanced plate really is the key.
Absolutely, and it's funny you say that because people think like, "Oh, I had like one healthy meal today, but I skipped breakfast and I probably had like a little snack for lunch. And then they're not, right? They're not balancing their blood sugar. And thank you for saying blood sugar balance, because people don't think of that. Whether what the heck does my blood sugar have to do with, right, with my
Yeah.
acne? But if you are having high androgens too, from a naturopathic perspective as well, there's usually some infection or inflammation. But to your point, where is that coming from? Why, right? Why is the gut maybe potentially have a dysbiotic infection, or why, like, what is the reason behind that? And speaking of, we keep talking about food. I feel the gluten, like, I tell people, and they hate me at first, but I tell people, you want this to happen quicker, you want to heal and seal a leaky gut, you really don't want to be eating gluten and dairy. And they get really
Yeah.
angry at first because it's a sacrifice that they have to
Yeah.
make. But do you agree with that? Do are you on that same?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
they hate me too. They hate me too when I say it.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Uh,
So, but the reality is, you had mentioned zonulin earlier as a marker for leaky gut. And we know that when we eat gluten, that's increasing
yep.
zonulin. For everyone, it's different. Some may be more affected than others, but it is it's increasing zonulin. And we also know with dairy, that, there have been a number of studies on dairy, and I'm talking including thousands and tens of thousands of people. And study after study just keeps showing that typically the more dairy that's consumed, the more acne, more likely to have acne, and often like the worse the severity of the acne as well. So even the American Dermatological Association has acknowledged, this huge body of evidence, and states that yes, dairy could be an acne trigger for some people. Unfortunately, they recommend that doctors don't really, give nutritional advice to their patients, which is unfortunate. But they do acknowledge that dairy and sugar are two pretty well established triggers, or a high glycemic load diet, I should say, are two pretty well established triggers for acne.
So you would say the gluten and the dairy and the sugar, I mean, just those three things alone, that's why some people who have mild acne, if they remove those in a month, they can, I mean, they could see a
A huge
significant,
difference. Yeah.
right? And then of course we talk about the ones that at least in 3 months, because it takes time for that gut lining to heal and seal. And if you're
Yeah.
having gluten in that time frame, you're just like recreating that intestinal permeability. And it can take, I think, several months for you to even stop reacting to that antibody inflammation from that gluten. So while we're not saying that maybe you can have a reduction in your acne with lower amounts of gluten, we're saying that if you actually commit to not having it, you can potentially get a lot better results. And then people will say, well, how long? They go, how long? How long? How long? And I say, well,
It
then
can.
hate me even more after that. So I say to them, okay, I'm Italian. I haven't eaten gluten and dairy in probably 20 years. I mean, they
Mhm.
like were horrified, but I tell them that it's possible because I'm Italian and I do it, and you're Italian
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
Um, right? So I personally think, you tell me if you agree with this, it really just depends on the patient. Some people, if they heal and seal their gut lining, they do an elimination diet, they might be able to eat gluten a couple times a month and not have a breakout. It really just depends on them.
Yeah.
But if there are patients, for example, when I do the GI map, there's a gliadin antibody in the stool panel that, like, one patient the other day, she's like, I wasn't even eating gluten and hers is through the roof. So I'm like, well, that means that, let's just say you got cross-contaminated one time and you didn't know it. Your immune system is reacting that crazy and you didn't even know you were eating it. So imagine if you are eating it more often, right? So there could be ways to check, right? There's food sensitivity panels. We do like finger prick tests at home, which can check for over 96 foods, because sometimes it's not gluten or dairy that's as bad as maybe it's eggs for some people, right? So it just maybe other food intolerances. So usually I'll do like an allergy panel in the blood that insurance covers. And then I'll give them the option. Do you want to do one of these out of pocket food sensitivities, which are these foods that if you if you eat it, you can have a reaction from 24 to 72 hours later. So it's not always what I ate that day. And that's why it can get very tricky for people. They're like, well, I didn't eat anything bad today, but it's the Sunday brunch you had that might have had eggs or might have had something you were, right,
Mhm.
reacting there. So
Yeah.
I'm happy. So you do agree that like some people may be able to introduce it back in and not have crazy breakouts because they gave themselves enough time to kind of quell that inflammation and that fire, right?
Exactly. I always say that if you give your body time to repair the guts and reduce the inflammation and you get to a really good place, then yes, down the line you'll find that your tolerance increases or your threshold before, you start getting symptoms again. So even me personally, I don't eat gluten or dairy when I'm in the US. But for most of, which is most of the year, but when I'm go to Italy for the summer, for a week or something, I will have, taste the bread or have the pizza or whatever it is, and I'm fine. I may get, if I do it for a few days in a row, I may get a tiny pimple, but if I have it one or 2 days, fine. There's no issues. Whereas before, if I had it, one meal the next day, it would be a huge explosion. So your threshold will, increase.
Will get better. And it's funny you mentioned the Italy thing because my patients say this all the time, where they're, it could be just the glyphosate, right? That's all the
Mhm.
pesticides that's on our food. We have it's obviously better quality, but I also wonder, you're in Italy, so you're not having stress hormone pumping most of the damn day too. So
Yeah.
like you're eating pasta and you're happy about it and you're not worried about what's going on with your job. And then on top of it, it's higher quality, but then what I do see is some people are like, oh, I'm in Italy, so it's high quality and then they overdo it, right? So you gotta
Yeah.
know where you can do, just like you said, like at your maybe
Yeah.
like someone just said to me the other day, I think I have Lyme flaring again. And I don't know, my gut, like she sent an email. I think it's could you just give me something for Lyme? And I'm like, I don't think it's her Lyme flaring. And I was like, we just have to have like a 15-minute call. What have you done in the last month? Oh, well, I went to Italy and they had like pasta 3 times a day for a week. I'm like, okay, well, that's why your joints are flaring. You feel like you have Lyme. Like, we just need to
Yeah.
work on your gut, right? So I think it's
Yeah.
knowing how much you can do. And if you had to say, what are the best foods? If you had to give, takeaway for people today, we said not to eat a ton of gluten and dairy or any at all and sugar, but is there specific healthy foods that you feel is even, better for acne than
Yeah.
others?
For sure. Definitely anything that's rich in omega-3s. So wild salmon, anchovies, sardines, mackerel, any of those fatty fish, those are excellent for acne because we know that omega-3 is a common deficiency amongst people with acne. And we also know that omega-3 is amazing for reducing inflammation, right? And acne is an inflammatory skin condition. So I would say that's number one. I'm also a huge fan of flaxseed. Ground flaxseed, I think, is a game changer. This was like my secret weapon when I had acne. I would just take a tablespoon of the ground flaxseed and sprinkle it on whatever I was eating, whether it's a salad, put it in a smoothie. I used to put it on like gluten-free toast with like avocado or other things. And what's great about the flax is that it has the omega-3, the plant-based omega-3, but it's also a good source of fiber. So it's going to help with irregularity. Green and orange vegetables, those, of course, all vegetables would be helpful, but particularly the green and the orange because those are a rich source of carotenoids. Oh, and back to, Accutane. Uh, Accutane is a vitamin A derivative, and we know that vitamin A is a common deficiency amongst people with acne. So before considering Accutane, I would go get my vitamin A tested. Or I mean, you could even go to a nutritionist and say, here's my diet for the week. Am I getting enough vitamin A? And they'll be able to kind of be like, you're really not eating any foods that contain vitamin A because a lot of foods don't have vitamin A. So,
That's
so
very
yes,
true.
yeah, right. Because it's
That's
primarily
really
found,
true.
yeah, like you're gonna get it in liver, and organ meats, which most people are not consuming. And then the plant-based vitamin A is coming from beta carotene or carotenoids, which are going to be found in those orange and green veggies, which again, a lot of people are not eating dark leafy greens and bright orange, carrots and sweet potatoes, whatever, every single day.
Mhm.
So yeah, so I would say those types of veggies are really helpful. And what else? Berries, anything that's antioxidant rich, pomegranate, that's also great for the gut. Those will all be really helpful superfoods for your skin.
Thank you. And the flax, I was thinking of one other thing too. So, seed cycling, right? With the
Hmm.
eating
Yeah.
seeds to balance your hormones. So, flax usually can be put in that first phase. So, you
Hmm.
can add flax to that phase one. So, seed cycling is basically eating certain seeds to support your hormones. And you do certain seeds 1 to 14 follicular and 14 and 15 to 28 luteal, because there's certain seeds that have certain nutrients that balance estrogen in the first phase and progesterone in the second. And so usually what I learned that I think pumpkin and flax is the first.
Hmm.
That also, so the flax is going to help because it's omega-3 rich, like you said, which is going to help
Hmm.
with inflammation. And then it's helping, like you said, with the fiber. It's helping you go to the bathroom. The fiber is reseeding the gut, helping
Hmm.
the good bacteria, which will lower
Yeah.
inflammation right from there. And then you can do the seed cycling. I love, have you seen, I'm so pissed I didn't come up with this idea myself. The, I'm like, what? I've been doing this my whole life, is seed cycling. I can't even believe. Do you see the brand Bia?
Yeah,
B.
I knew you were gonna say Bia. Yeah, 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 yeah. I have seen
I
it.
love that. Like, I'm so happy for them. I'm just annoyed
Yeah.
that I didn't do it first. And I think I shared this on another podcast, but if anyone doesn't know, I was on birth control from like 17 to 23, nightmare, come off of it, didn't get my period for a year and a half. That's how much it screwed me
Right.
up. Went to a
Yeah.
naturopath in Arizona before I started naturopathic medical school, and he told me to start eating seeds on certain parts of my cycle. I thought he was crazy, but I'm like, well, I'm
Yeah.
going to school for this. I better get on
No.
board. So I ate these seeds, and I swear to you, Maria, I got my period every 28 days for like years, like clockwork after that,
Mhm.
just by eating seeds.
Yeah.
So that the food as medicine is so important. And if people want to get some ideas of what to eat, I know you have a great Instagram channel. I don't know if I
Yeah.
mentioned before. So Maria's Instagram, it's Maria Marlowe. It's Maria and then Marlowe. But you have the Real Food Grocery Guide, and then you have
Mhm.
the also Be Healthy Every Day. So can they get that on the website? Will that help them? And obviously the reels and your stories about healthy food.
Yeah, yeah. So I have a lot of like free content on my Instagram, on my website. There's a lot on my YouTube. YouTube is Glow by Marlowe. TikTok, if anyone's on. So I kind of publish everywhere. Although I had a baby recently, so I'm a bit slower than usual with
That's
content.
okay. You have the out with your new beautiful baby.
Yeah, but so yeah, so Real Food Grocery Guide is a book that's published. It's on Amazon. And Be Healthy Every Day also. That's basically a guide, for someone who's like new to healthier eating. It's a guide to choosing the healthiest foods in the grocery store. Be Healthy Every Day is like a daily planner to kind of help you set and stick to your health goals. Because for anyone who likes to write things down, like I'm a person that likes to write things versus an app.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the old fashioned way. So it's a really nice, cool planner for like your health goals. And then I would say the Clear Skin Plan, which that's kind of my signature program for helping to clear your skin naturally. And I say about 90 days. And it kind of leads you through kind of step by step figuring out how, what is your particular root cause and what actions to take.
Oh, good. So that was what I wanted to ask you. So your clear skin plan, is that like a do it yourself like course?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like a
Oh,
do it yourself guide to clearing your skin. It kind of like asks you questions like, okay, yes or no, yes or no. Okay, here, like, look, read more about this, that kind of a thing.
got it. So it
Yeah.
asks you questions, it directs you to the right place, and then gives you, if you don't have a practitioner, it gives you basically Maria's brain with
Yeah,
kind of do it yourself. Okay, that's an
exactly.
amazing resource. So you can get those books, and then you can either do her clear skin plan. Definitely recommend her probiotic. There's, oh my goodness, we should do a second one on and I don't know if you talk a lot about this, but the clean beauty products and what you think about those and how much, you feel like those are
Yeah.
important. But is there anything else? There's so much more I feel like we could talk about, but is there anything else you feel like is really important to close with? Anything we didn't mention so far that you think is really important for people with acne to know?
I think the most important thing for people with acne to know is that it's really a blessing in disguise. I know it doesn't seem like that when you're going through it, but it is because when it's on our face, it's going to prompt us to kind of keep digging and keep digging to get to the root so we can fix it. And the result is that if you really do tackle it via your diet and lifestyle, not only are you going to clear up your skin, but you're going to improve your gut, you're going to improve your mental health, your mood, your immune system, your overall health. So really, I know when you're in the thick of it, it doesn't feel like it, but in retrospect, once you get to the other side, you'll see it really is a blessing.
Yeah, thank you for saying that and encourage people because, we almost feel like, oh, why me? But if I didn't have migraines, I wouldn't have tried to figure out why. Like I had Lyme disease. I would have never known. It would have put me in a
Yeah.
wheelchair by now, right? Like if I didn't, if that was a signal, right? So while I may not get, debilitating acne like some other people, right? That's my susceptibility. So someone the other day just called and said, had a free consult, and they were saying, "Hey, my cholesterol, I eat really well, and my cholesterol is high. What could that be?" And then we started digging into like, what is her stress like? What is her digestion like? And I said, while you're so concerned with this, I'm concerned about your whole picture. So if that was like you said, a signal to say, hey,
Mhm.
we might look into your gut. We might need to look into your stress. It's not always your food. So these are, like Maria said, signals that we have to do something and your whole life will improve. So while you're just maybe thinking you're helping some condition on your outside, you have to change so much of this inside that you're going to be happier, healthier, more fit. You're going to like the way you look. And then the weight loss, let's just say you needed to lose weight. It's kind of like,
Mhm.
would you agree? It's just all packaged in
All
together.
connected.
People just lose
Yeah.
weight.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. When your blood sugar is stable, when you're eating a nutrient dense, fiber rich diet, like when you're eating enough protein, eating enough healthy fat, your hormones are balanced, your body is going to everything is going to kind of fall into place and come into balance.
Absolutely. I'm so happy to have had you on. Thank you so much. This is so enlightening. I think people are going to really love this episode because I think we're missing this synergy, right? Where it's like we're just looking for this one thing, but it's like, hey, how can we balance all of this together? So I'd love to have you back and talk about maybe some of the toxins that we can remove from
Mhm.
our lives, like the things that affect our hormones, maybe toxins, things that you've seen
Yeah.
over the years have helped from a clear skin, for actually using things to clear your skin on the outside that could complement the things that you do for the inside. But thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you for having
You can
me.
find Maria on Instagram, like I mentioned before, Maria Marlowe with an E at the end, and grab her books and her probiotic. And we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks so much for listening to Modern Day Naturopath Podcast with Dr. Sue.